Big hand for Dr. S.K. Mathur. Decency personified, Dr. S.K. Mathur.
Something, he is a Padam Bhushan A, and beside that is a human being par excellence. We are very proud to meet his mind. I will not take further time, and I request Dr. Seth Gupta to say a few words about Dr. Ambrish Mithal and go ahead and see him.
Thank you, sir. It's my proud privilege this evening to invite Dr. Mithal sir for the lecture. Sir is the first DM endocrine from All India Institute and is one of the most well-recognized cases in the field of endocrinology and diabetes in India and abroad. He subsequently went on to be faculty and manage the SGPGI department division of endocrinology. And right now he is the chairman of MEDANTA Institute of Endocrinology and Diabetes. Sir has done yeoman's work in the field of osteoporosis and thyroid, and his work is widely quoted the world over. It's a proud privilege to have him this evening, and also despite his stature and extremely busy schedule, he is just a phone call away. When I am stuck, he is my go-to man, and he has been extremely benevolent enough to help me out, and likewise many others, of our colleagues. May I invite Dr. Mithal sir for the talk, to be presented on the management algorithm of type 2 diabetes, and I am very sure we would be enriched with his personal experience and his personal tips for all of us. Dr. Mithal sir.
I don't need all these words. Thank you very much anyway. I mean, this is like home, this is like family. We are all part of South Delhi Physicians Forum, and I'm always happy to be here. If I had my way, I would attend every Wednesday. But my schedule sometimes, doesn't allow it. So because I'm very much part of you guys, all of you. So let's talk today. I was first thinking of doing the whole management algorithm, and I thought that would become too unwieldy. So, or too basic, and you would get bored. So I think one of the important areas in diabetes management is truly regarding insulin. And myths regarding insulin. And very many times in busy practice, it is the truth that patients are not offered insulin by many of us simply because we don't have time. And to avoid the hassle of explaining, convincing, because it takes a lot of time to convince anybody to go on insulin. That is the truth. Yet, the importance of insulin therapy and how it is important even in type 2 diabetes. So let's today look at the ways to initiate our type 2 diabetes patients on insulin. We are not talking about type 1 diabetes. That is a separate story. That is insulin from day one. And that's almost always basal bolus therapy. Now let me at the outset tell you that I am pretty much a basal bolus person, which means there are two broad insulin regimens. One is a basal plus bolus, which means one long-acting insulin with 3 or 4 short-acting boluses, right? And the other is using pre-mixed insulin twice a day, which is using mixture of intermediate and short-acting twice a day. Now India is a pre-mixed market. It's a cliche almost. We know that most of us use pre-mixed insulin. In my environment, in the kind of hospitals I've always worked, in multi-specialty, in big hospitals with complicated cases, chronic kidney disease, post-CABG, all those kind of post-transplant, we are big users of basal and bolus. And we are probably the biggest users of analogs as a single center in this country. And that's because of the kind of patients we see, not for any other reason. So, I will today, however, talk about premix because I thought in clinical practice, sitting in your clinic, premix usage is very high. And I thought it's good to clear the difference between that and basal bolus and how should we start our patients on insulin. Sunil Mishra has prepared this talk, so I put his name there. He's an associate director in our division at Medanta. So why should we think of insulin? What is it importantly a little bit more expensive? Who should be started on premixed insulin? How should we do that? And what is the experience from data? And what to do about oral antidiabetics when you start people on insulin? There was a time, it's an American concept. There was a time that patients who were started on insulin, their oral antidiabetics were stopped completely. And I had these patients visiting from US as tourists in India who were 120 kg in weight and taking 200 units of insulin and were still uncontrolled and were on no OHA. Over the years, it has become apparent that to control type 2 diabetes to your satisfaction, to your goal, it cannot happen with insulin alone. Almost always you will require an oral anti-diabetic in place. So one fundamental issue is what we were taught as undergraduates, that insulin is supreme. Yes, it is. But to control a type 2 diabetes only with insulin is very, very difficult. Almost impossible. We see that every day. So in our practice, for example, because we do a lot of surgical practice, meaning surgical clearances and management perioperative, we don't discontinue OHA unless there is a complication, unless someone has kidney disease or something like that. I'm talking of regular patients. We don't discontinue OHAs till the day before the surgery. You try doing that. We were taught when we were students that the moment patient comes into the hospital, stop all OHA, patient has to go for a coronary bypass surgery, okay? And put the patient on multiple insulin shots. Try doing that and see how well the patient is going to be controlled. So, what I'm trying to emphasize is that insulin therapy does not mean transiting to insulin. It means adding on insulin, often to existing OHA or a modified OHA pattern. That's very important. I still see those prescriptions when people start insulin, they stop all OHA. It won't work. You'll be struggling. Because type 2 diabetes is insulin deficiency plus insulin resistance. If you're going to just fix insulin deficiency, what about insulin resistance? You need molecules that will enhance insulin action. So don't forget that. So why insulin therapy? Analogs, premix, experience some studies and issues regarding OAD. So let's look at this gentleman. This is a 62-year-old gentleman. Duration of type 2 diabetes is 13 years. Typical patient for the OPD. He's 75 kilograms, not grossly overweight. In fact, not at all overweight. Almost ideal weight. Current treatment is also very difficult. Glimepiride plus metformin. Many of your patients, most of your patients are on that. Lab results showing 8.7. Now, patient is not so bad about lifestyle actually, but he wants to improve his control. So, how would you help this patient reach his goal? This is the kind of logbook he is presenting to you. You say, okay, let me first figure out what you do. So you say, monitor your sugars and come back. This is the kind of reading that you're getting, okay? 8.7 A1C, fasting 140, 160. Post means touching 200. It's not working. Touching 200 after breakfast and 190 and all after lunch. You can see that. And after dinner again 200 plus. So there is high postprandial and there is thank you. There is high postprandial and the fastings are also high. Now this patient is only on glimepiride metformin. So what would you do for such a patient? Would you add an additional oral agent? Would you consider that? If yes, which one would you consider? Any thoughts? So people would consider DPP-4 inhibitor, which is a pretty good sort of molecule to add on. He has a fairly good lifestyle, by the way. I said that, regimented lifestyle. Okay, so some people would consider DPP-4. Would you consider TZDs, glitazones, pioglitazone? Would you consider that? No. You could consider that. Nothing wrong in considering that. There are issues with pioglitazone and glitazone which are a little contentious, including weight gain and pededema and other things, and weakening of bones. He's in the older age group. You have to be careful, but yes, you could consider. It's not wrong to consider it. Would you consider SGLT2 for it? Yes. You would. Right. So let's look at the guy again. His BMI is 23.8. While that doesn't exclude SGLT2, it doesn't make it the drug of first choice for such a patient, because you will lose some weight and you will have his wife calling you every day कि इनका चेहरा बहुत उतरा लग रहा है, चलने की वजह से सुबह की कहते हैं शाम का चेहरा मुरझा जाता है एकदम। तो ये भी है 120 kg patients you put them on SGLT2 and their wives will complain कि सब कमजोर लग रहे हैं बहुत आजकल, वजन कम हो गया है। So we have a peculiar psychology, but anyway, so I think this is important to remember that not a great choice, but yes. Would you add a basal insulin at bedtime? Will you do that? It's a good option because the patient is 140, 160, but the patient is going up by 100 points after meals. So it is possible that a basal insulin alone may not do the trick, right? Because if you bring down the fasting to 100, you'll still have PPs of 180, 190, 200. So it's a bit iffy. Would you begin a premixed insulin therapy? Would you consider premixed insulin at this stage? You could consider it. It will fulfill many of your needs. But as I said, all options are open. And please don't do the last. Stop OADs and start basal bolus therapy. You stop OADs only when there's an indication to stop OADs. CKD is a prime example. There you have to stop everything. Or someone who's, for whatever reason, hospitalized, this, that. But basically, you don't have to stop OADs, all OADs.
So, why would you not stop OADs? It's perfectly okay.
No, it's not.
Why?
Because you will not be able to attain the kind of control you would want to in a patient where you're putting on insulin unless there is a reason to stop OADs. So there is no reason to stop an insulin sensitizer like metformin, for example. You are going to stop metformin in a patient of type 2 diabetes unless there is a reason to stop. If there is a reason, you will stop. Otherwise, you will not be able to control it well. I can tell you that by experience as well as by data.
I would request the audience to please ask the question at the end because sir has a meeting to attend to. So we'll try and expedite. Let's please let you complete please.
So look at this second patient. Yeah, second patient. Patient with type 2 diabetes on OADs, but A1C is 10.5, not 8.7. Okay, I forgot one point. In the first patient, why is DPP4 inhibitor? It's an okay choice. Why is it not a fantastic choice? Because the A1C is 8.7, you don't expect a drastic reduction in A1C with DPP4. You will come down to 8 maybe. If you're very lucky, 7.8. You won't come to 7 if that's your target. So it's not a power, it's a good molecule but not a powerful molecule in that sense. A1C is 10.5. Now this is much easier choice. If A1C is 10.5 and the patient is on 3 drugs, so you don't have too much choices. If A1C is 10.5 and if the patient is already on glimepiride, metformin and sitagliptin, 10.5, what's going to work? He has predictable daily routine also. He is not a bad patient in that sense. So, how would you decide A1C goal and how would you decide choice? Again, the same choices. Here, of course, additional oral agent can be considered. You can still consider SGLT2 in this patient if patient is obese or overweight, and if patient is unwilling for injectables, you would still fall back on that. Otherwise, you would definitely think of adding insulin. Would you prefer basal or premixed for this particular patient? So one of the rules of thumb that we use, there's no hard and fast rule in this. One of the thumb that we use is that if A1C is above 9, basal alone may not be sufficient. This is not a golden rule, but it helps in decision making in the OPD. If the A1C is over 9 and patient is compliant otherwise, just adding basal insulin may not do the trick. And it may be good to add a premix or a basal bolus rather than that. Okay? So insulin is the most powerful agent that we have. There is no upper limit to insulin dose. So patients get hassled. One of the reasons they get hassled is that we start with low dose of insulin. So when you start largely, you start with 8 or 10 units, then you increase by 2 units every third day. When you start premix, you start with 10 units twice a day or 10 or 6 or something. And despite explaining to the patient that we are starting with low dose, by the time the dose reaches 14 or 16, patients are very hassle. कि बढ़ाते जा रहे हो कुछ हो गया, इससे चलो टैबलेट दे दे. So this is, you have to explain, this requires a lot of counseling. That I always tell them, I expect the average person. Indians are not big users of basal plus therapy. Do we know what is basal plus therapy? We all know basal bolus. Basal bolus is one basal insulin and bolus is before each meal, right? Basal plus is one basal insulin and one or maybe two short-acting insulin to cover one meal. So supposing you added basal insulin to somebody and his sugars are okay or her sugars are okay except post-breakfast or except post-lunch. Supposing sugars are rising only after one meal. In that case, you may want to add a short-acting only for that meal. So that is basal plus therapy, right? And of course basal bolus, that we know that 3 shots before each meal or sometimes even 4 shots and a long acting. Now it is good to mention one point here. Somebody may wonder why analogs versus conventional human insulin. So there are pros and cons of both. This talk is not about that, but the question is, I know, very common, so I'll address it right now. Broadly speaking, when you use analogs, they are faster absorbed. So you get a sharper rise in insulin level and you blunt the postprandial response. So you get better PP control with analogs, number one. Analogs can be given just before the meal, whereas conventional human insulin has to be given half an hour to 40 minutes before the meal, which in real world is very hard. You yourself decide if you have taken insulin before breakfast, you are rushing to see your patients are waiting, 30-40 minutes के gap वही हो गया, insulin लगाइए 30 minutes wait करिए, कैसे करें? So these little things make a difference. The problem with analogs, what is the problem? Nothing is always completely good, you know, there's always some problems. The problem with analogs is that the action doesn't often last till the next meal. So a lunchtime short-acting insulin, Lispro-Raspart, often does not cover till dinner time. Because it escapes, especially in type 1s of course, because they have no insulin, but it tends to escape at that time. So these are the pros and cons of using conventional insulin versus analog. So the goal is to improve fasting glucose, basal insulin, gold standard, no question. Glargine or whatever you like. Nowadays Degludec, nowadays 2-0, whichever you like. But glargine is sort of a good one to remember, right? If goal is to improve BP glucose alone, supposing someone has okay readings but only the PPs are going up and despite your adding alpha glucosidase inhibitors like Goblibos and all, it's still not controlled, then you may want to add a prandial insulin. We don't do this commonly. We think the postprandial risers are almost always linked to carbohydrate intake in the meal. And if you can push them to manage their diet, you can get it down. But you may require this alone sometimes. So alone prandial insulin is not commonly used, but it can be used, it's a legitimate strategy. If goal is fasting plus PPG, you will continue either OAD for postprandial with basal, continue oral drugs with basal, so you continue the gliptin, metformin, whatever, plus you add a basal for the fasting. So gliptin, metformin for PP and basal insulin for fasting glucose. Or you go for premixed analogs, or you go for basal bolus therapy. That is obvious. But to achieve optimal control, you have to get both fasting and BP under control. So everyone has their own take on this. So there you are. ADA follows that also. A1C more than 9, you may do basal plus therapy, or premix less than 9, you can do just a basal. IDF says anything, everyone has their own things. Okay. So, but this is a broad clinical guideline that we use. 9% is a good cutoff. If it's above 9%, basal alone will not do the trick. We're also aware of all the available preparations. We're aware of NPH. We're aware of Decimate, not commonly used, so you will not be aware. Glargine is common, most commonly used, with a lot of generic brands also available. Premixed is the one that is very commonly used in India. So many kinds. We are all aware of human insulin 30-70, human mixed hard, all those things. Humalog mix, Eglucin. You are aware of all these brands. These are premixed insulins. But of course, you may have just the the short-acting version also, because that is Listro, that may be just there, but commonly used brands which are premix insulins. You may have just regular insulins, or as I said, you may have Listro as part of blue glycerin just before meals, which we just discussed the difference between that and the regular insulin. And this is important. The kinetics have to be understood. The kinetics have to be understood well, and here we are. This is regular. See the orange line here? This is conventional human insulin R or human activate or whatever you call it. This is here. This is Listro or aspart. Sharp rise mimicking normal human physiology of insulin secretion also. Now you of course have ultra short acting and all that, but you're not going into that. We have Detimel which you can ignore. NPH, as everyone knows NPH forever. NPH, look at the variation here. That is the problem with NPH. Good insulin, better than not using individual acting, very cheap, but this is a problem. Right? And glargine, of course, you know. So if you look at different regimens, what happens with untreated, of course this is there, when you use a basal, see the whole graph comes down. Right? The postprandial excursions don't come down. The difference between pre and post does not come down. The overall line comes down. So the line comes down from here to here. But the excursions are maintained. पूरा ग्राफ आपने नीचे pull down कर दिया ऐसे, without changing the shape of the graph. Right? If you use a premix or a basal bolus, that is you're using Pandial plus basal insulin, then obviously you not only pull down the graph, but you also pull down the excursion. That is the basic difference. So again, repeating, for premix, beyond target with basal insulin, more than 9%. Oral agent failure, meaning you reach the maximum tolerated dose. I don't like the word oral agent failure, but nevertheless, maximum tolerated dose, contraindication, cost issues, cost of oral agents is not low anymore. Let me also tell you, we all keep complaining about so many things, but insulin price is pretty well controlled in this country. 90% of the patients sitting in remote areas don't require an hour, they require regular insulin. And that price is one of the cheapest in the world. Okay? So that's why when the BMJ editor, are you aware of this episode? When the BMJ editor, who is a very sort of socialist, activist kind of lady, very brilliant obviously, she's a Navy editor, she came here and gave an interview to Economic Times saying that insulin is being thrust upon Indian patients who don't require it. It is all driven by industry. And there is no need for these patients to be on insulin, all kinds of stuff. Which is really bizarre, which was pathetic. I mean, which is so, in any case, we are struggling to move our patients to insulin. And she went on to say insulin is expensive and this is all a doctor. Pura bola, pharma and expensive. I wrote a stinker of a response to that on social media and everything. And I said the Economic Times should really worry about what it's saying and worry about their own credibility if they are quoting such things. But we are struggling to convert our patients to insulin, and people are dying of complications because they don't take insulin. Someone just flies in and gives this gyan to us that everything we're doing is wrong. So this is not right. Oral agent failure is not a great thing, but cost is not a real reason to keep your patient on insulin. That's what I'm trying to say. You have enough brands, whichever company you like, whichever brand you like, you have enough cheap brands because the prices of the non-analog insulins are all the same. They're tightly regulated by the government. So you need to know that. Diet history, of course, that makes a big difference in India, especially people missing lunches. My surgical diabetes friends, surgeons, they have a big problem with insulin because they don't have lunch sometimes. I mean, most doctors are very irregular about their lunch, so you have to be very, very cautious in treating such people. So then also when you have put someone on insulin, basal insulin, right? Standard, you start someone on glargine. When do we start worrying about it's not working enough, you have to do something else. The important point is, if you have normalized the fasting glucose with glargine and still the PP is high or A1C is high, then you worry about what do you do now. तो पेशेंट को पूछता है कि बढ़ा देते हैं इंसुलिन अगर कंट्रोल नहीं, पर फास्टिंग तो कंट्रोल्ड है, उसने बढ़ाया तो यू गेट हाइपोग्लाइसीमिया. So then you say no, this insulin will not work. You will have to add either a bolus or move the patient to premix. Whenever you are going of average dose of glargine, typically if you are using just glargine with OADs, if you are hitting 40 units, there is a problem. There is something wrong. You need to do something else. A rule of thumb. These are practical points that I am telling you. Okay. So if you are using glargine, you are hitting 40 units, it means something has to be added somewhere. And if fasting is normal and A1C is still above your target, you need to add a candidate insulin. So you could use premix insulin as starter insulin in those who have higher A1Cs. You cover postprandial also well. So you identify your patient, optimize OADs. Now, when you are on premix insulins, you may want to reduce secretagogues. When you are in basal insulin, you continue all OADs. When you are on premix insulin, the role of sulfonylurea starts declining. And you may want to limit your OADs to metformin, gliptin, and now SGLT2. You can use sulfonylurea. It's not at all prohibited, but the role becomes limited because you're giving insulin anyway. The role of a secretagogue is different. Gliptins are different. They have glucagon actions, they have other actions. Sulfonylurea is straight secretagogue, so its role is limited there. You have to select the kind of insulin. Make sure that you demonstrate the insulin technique or someone does it on your behalf. Without that, it's all useless. Even now in the evening, I saw a patient 40, 40, 40, 60 in all kind of regimen, basal bolus, and we see all these kind of patients all the time. And the simple problem was that patient is injecting into the hypertrophic site again and again because it doesn't hurt there. So, it makes no sense why patient should not be controlled on such high dose. So technique is very important, and always start with low dose and titrate gradually because you never know insulin sensitivity of a patient. There is no formula for that. And the formula, whatever are there, are very unreliable. Start with low dose, up titrate, but tell the patient, I expect your dose to be, give him some high figure so that he doesn't bother you every day. Now, you obviously will up titrate or down titrate based on the readings. There is no doubt about that. You have to check for hypoglycemia. Very, very important. And you will check your A1C too. So, it doesn't work. Most of the patients will not be a 2/3, 1/3 kind of regimen. How do you start starting doses? Western guidelines. If you're starting with a single dose of premix, which I don't do commonly, in my hands or in my team actually, we start premix twice a day typically. We don't usually start premix once a day. Odd cases may be there. We do start co-formulations of degludec and aspart once a day sometimes. But not typical premixes, we will start twice a day. But there are different formula you can use. If you're using up to 10 units, you can use it once. Using more than 10 you think you require, you can split it into, but it really depends on your patient profile. These days, everything is individualized. The use of continuous glucose monitoring Libre-Pro, I strongly recommend for your patients. It is a simple patch stuck on the upper arm and gives you a reading for 15 days. And the cost is not high. Somewhere 2,000 to 3,000 rupees for a 15-day glucose chart. And then you can decide where to add your insulin, which one is required prandial, it's worth it. It's worth it. So continuous monitoring has come to stay. I am telling you in 5 years, maybe even less 3 years, this glucose strip monitoring will rapidly go up. You will, at least in the paid, private environment. You will find everyone going around with those stickers on that because the cost will keep coming down as well as the increases. So I think that's the way we should do. So, okay, rule of the thumb, 10-12 units you can start with once a day. But if you're going above that, then we want to start with split doses twice a day. This is how you will adjust. You will adjust based on what you find as the glucose value. So you will adjust the morning dose based on the pre-dinner value. You will adjust the evening dose based on the morning value. But there is a problem in this. It's all easy to describe and discuss. Doesn't work in real world often. What it doesn't work is, if you're just purely on the basis of pre-dinner value, sometimes pre-lunch hypos will happen. If you're just purely on the basis of fasting value, sometimes midnight hypos will happen. So you have to take a holistic picture. This is why I was saying use of technology is good, but in general, this is the guideline. In general, this is the guideline. Morning dose, breakfast dose based on evening sugar, evening dose based on morning sugar. Right? That's how we do it. So if you look at a comparison, obviously if you're using BID premix versus a basal insulin, BID premix will give better control. One shot will not be able to match up to 2 shots. This is a comparison of Lispro mix 25, egg-lucent or Imolog, whatever, versus glargine. And you can see that percentage of patients who attain treatment targets is higher with the Lispro mix rather than with glargine, because you're using 1 shot there and 2 shots there, and you're using prandial insulin there, you're using only basal insulin. So it's not a fair comparison, but just to explain that it works very well. This is important and is exactly as expected. What is the... Okay. This gray line is the basal line. This is where you added glargine. When you add the gray line is the glargine line, and the orange line is the premixed line, right? So when you add glargine, let's look at the fasting sugar. Which will lower fasting sugar better? Glargine, right? So you see the gray dot here. It is lower than the orange dot. So glargine works excellently well, very well for fasting blood glucose. Look at the postprandial excursions. Which will lower it better? It will be premix. So you see that very clearly. So with glargine, better lowering of fasting. With premix, better lowering of post-meal sugars. And that's what is evident. Here, the difference is not so much in the post-lunch. In my experience, when we use premix twice a day, very often post-lunch is left uncovered. And if you carefully monitor post-lunch sugar, you will find many times they are high. And that's the thing, that is the problem with premix. Also, in this case, effective A1C control of both fasting and BP, an option to intensify, you can go on and take the dose. Limitation is daytime hypo, pre-lunch hypo, nocturnal hypo is slightly higher. Somewhat more weight gain, already I told you, no coverage of lunchtime, right? And less flexible. You are just long acting also, it is short acting because it's premixed. That is a challenge. आपको अगर लगता है कि मुझे थोड़ा सा प्रेडिल इंसुलिन बढ़ाना है, इसका बाकी तो ठीक है, लेकिन ब्रेकफास्ट के बाद का क्यों बढ़ रहा है? और आप अगर मॉर्निंग इंसुलिन बढ़ाएंगे तो यू नॉट इंक्रीजिंग ओनली शॉर्ट एक्टिंग, लॉन्ग एक्टिंग ऑल्सो, पता लगा बाद में हाइपोग्लाइसेमिया होगा. That is always a disadvantage of premixed preparations. Okay, now look at this. This is a very good slide actually. This shows premixed insulin versus basal insulin. And this is a talk on premixed insulin. But my talk does not change based on the forum. Okay. So what do you see here? In fasting glucose level, premix analog, if you're to the left of this line, it favors premix. To the right of the line favors basal. So every study showed that basal insulin is better than premixed for control of fasting glucose. Right? Which is rational, intuitively correct. But if you look at postprandial then you find that it is going the other way. Right? So, the same point being made, which I already explained in the cartoon. Again, when you look at A1Cs, overall, if you're looking at just 1 shot of long-acting versus 2 shots of premix, you will find that you find better A1C control in premix, which is again very logical and not very difficult to understand. So what about OADs? If you're using premix, metformin to be continued unless contraindicated. Always continue metformin unless there is reason to stop it. Right? Clitozones in insulin combinations are used minimally. I use them minimally anyway, but they are not commonly combined with insulin because it causes more fluid retention and so many other issues, more weight gain. basal insulin regimen, you continue all OADs. You can continue sulfonylurea also. In premix, you can continue sulfonylurea and DPP4 initially, but typically we take the sulfonylurea, lower the dose or take it off. DPP4 now is continued almost always. Now, what about recommended daily tests? Now, this is another question. What about your self-monitoring of glucose? The moment you put in insulin, you need more monitoring. That is true. The guidelines about self-monitoring are bizarre, erratic, and vague. So you have to do it based on your clinical experience. I think when you have a patient on insulin, you have to educate the patient about SMBG, self-monitoring. And I think you have to, without that, don't start insulin. If the patient is not going to do self-monitoring at all, don't start insulin. The frequency of monitoring can depend on the complexity of the regimen the patient is on, requirement for tight control, risk of hypoglycemia, that will decide how frequently you have to do it. But do not start insulin in somebody who will not monitor blood glucose at home. That is a given. You know, the new glucometers, the value comes directly on the phone, patient's phone, and also on our phone. We are using it in patients. We have an app by which if someone measures the blood sugar, it can come on the phone directly. So that is impossible when you have 150, 200 patients with diabetes. So at least the hot spots come to the consultant on call. The hypos and the hypers over 350 or under 70, they will come on the phone. So you are just checking the glucometer and all this is happening. So these things are going to be commonplace very soon. They already are becoming commonplace. The new glucometers are all having these facilities. Accuracy, they have exhausted. They have built as much as they could. Time of testing, how does it matter? 15 seconds, 10 seconds, or 12 seconds. They keep, so now they moved ahead. The new glucometers have an app that you can download on your phone, and the patient, all the charts, all the analysis is already done when the patient comes to you. So coming towards the end, who are the patients where we use premix analogs? Middle-aged to old patients with fixed meal pattern and lifestyle. Those who have very erratic lifestyle are not good for premix. Use a basal bolus then. Because if you're going to give a premix in the morning, and the patient doesn't have lunch, there is a problem. If you're going to give a short-acting analog in the morning, then it will wash away by lunchtime. You won't get high. Patients with high A1Cs, as I already emphasized, and on OADs, patients who are finding difficulty with 30-minute streaks, very practical. These are slides that we discussed in the department. These are not things often written in textbook. That patients do find it difficult to take 30 minutes before. And that's a good reason to go on analog. Right? And of course, those who are vulnerable to hypoglycemia, when you're looking for better postprandial control. Definitely, the simplicity of a premix makes it easy to use. Because there's no error of mixing and all those things are already finished. So what do the guidelines say? Premix insulins are an alternative approach to starting insulin therapy. You can initiate therapy with 1 or 2 shots of premix insulin. 2 injections per day rather than 4 injections per day is an advantage for convenience, compliance, adherence of the patient. If failing on basal insulin, you can transit to premix insulin because despite failing on basal, patients will not want to go on basal bolus very often. They don't want 4 shots. And SMBG, at least twice a day when you're titrating, later on it can become less, is important. Fasting and before dinner. And concomitant OADs, while secretagogues become less important with premix insulin, it is not mandatory to discontinue even sulfonylurea immediately. You can taper it off, slowly depending on the response. And if someone is doing fine with the combo, you can continue that without having to change. So I think it's pretty important that we realize the pros and cons of using insulins, which type of insulin, and 2 broad areas are important to understand. Conventional versus analog, basal approach, basal plus basal bolus versus premix. And if we choose it carefully, we can get most of our patients under reasonable control. And therefore, Copernicus, who could be wiser? To know that we know and what we know, and to know that we do not know what we do not know. I think वो जो जानते हैं कि नहीं जानते और नहीं जानते कि नहीं जानते बोला जाता है. तो ये जानना बहुत जरूरी कि क्या हम जानते हैं, ये भी जानना बहुत जरूरी कि क्या हम नहीं जानते, राइट? तभी हम डिसीजन सही करेंगे। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
Thank you, Dr. Mithal.
Charting, reading a paper when they get fed up of these pricks on the fingertips. Can we do the pricks even on the palm? Apparently, that paper said that they give a reasonably equivalent kind of blood sugar.
Yeah, people are even fingers, although fingers are more sensitive,
Right.
but still, you can do it. Forearm is well established.
Two very important things, sir. The sliding scale doesn't exist anymore for all
Yes,
of us.
yes.
And
I mean, this is a bigger thing than I thought a few years ago, because now we check everybody. Also have the luxury of having 14 educators in our team. So, and it's amazing how much improvement in controls happen with insulin technique corrections. I always thought it was important, but identity management is so important. It's unbelievable that before you do anything, because we used to go on a tracking diet, and of course check the sites ourselves. But how much can you do when there are 20 people waiting outside? You can do, chalo, theek hai, thoda sa idhar lagao, karo. But when you have someone going into each of those, it makes a difference. So injection site technique management is unbelievable. Very quickly, my favorite story about insulin technique management. To do that, we sometimes use an orange, right? Because our orange skin is like human skin a little bit. So, especially for international patients where they don't understand the language sometimes, our educators explain using an orange is that, okay? So this guy is well controlled in hospital and we explained everything, my educator explained and then, how to inject and everything, this is how you have to do. And the patient comes back after 1 week and I get angry at everybody, how come all sugars are full, what have you guys do to the patient, yeah? I mean, ठीक था ward में, कुछ गड़बड़ हो गया, उसको क्या sepsis हो गया, क्या हो गया, कैसे हो गया? He was injecting in the orange and eating the orange. He was eating the orange. So he was doing two things. He was injecting into the orange. Number one. Number two, the insulin is gone. Number two is having orange with every meal. Because that is how you get it. So these things happen with insulin. Even the science. So, enlarging 20-25% people don't get 24 hours coverage. So when you're using Lantus or Glargine or whatever, the effect tends to sometimes tail off. Not a lot, tail off towards the last 4 hours. So आपने अगर रात को लगाया 10 बजे supposing, तो शाम 6-7 बजे के बाद कभी-कभी effect खत्म होने लगता है. So that's you have to be regular के साथ नहीं करना, टूजियो के साथ नहीं करना.
True. And one very definite advantage of the short-acting analogs would be, sir, like in the wards when sisters have to inject too many patients together. Maybe having an analog rather than a general would be a much better thing to do.
Because analogs, the short-acting like this bro, can be given just before you start eating, even when the patient is starting eating. But you can't do that with the regular insulin, insulin R or active.
Actually, likewise, you said very importantly that you have to tweak the regime as per the patient's requirements.
Yes, of course.
And in elderly and nephropathic patients, it's, I think, not advisable to chase an HbA1c of 7. Try to basically individualize targets. Thank you so much for such a brilliant lecture. I open the forum for discussion.
So as I get older, I realize more and more importance of counseling and education for the patient. We spent 3 days discussing one molecule and the features of the new molecule and how exciting it is. The patient is hiding it. Half the time he's not having the medicine, or stop the medicine, or is taking it the wrong way. So I think those things require more, not that new molecules are not important, but those things require much more emphasis than we are used to. As physicians, we are not trained. As physicians, we are trained to prescribe the best drug. That is our training. But in chronic care, prescribing the best drug is only less than 50% of your job. The patients don't take medicine or take it the wrong way, everything is wrong. So that we have to invest in educating our patients, otherwise we will not get good results. Yes.
Dr. Mithal, what a fascinating talk, sir. So, what did the ADA 2018 talk about insulin? They said the aggressive glucose lowering may not be the best strategy in elderly patients.
Yes, of course.
And you need to individualize this stratification in all the patients.
100%.
Sir, what about the glucose, glycemia may not reduce the macrovascular events, but hypertension and lipids probably will do that. How is that?
Yeah, that's off the topic, but I'll quickly answer it. We all know that it is not about a glucocentric approach. We treat patients holistically. These days, anybody who's treating diabetes is a chronic care physician, not a diabetologist, not an endocrinologist. When we started our careers, we used to fix the sugar and send the patient off. That is true. That is more than 30 years ago. Now, you do everything for the patient. You manage their lipids, you manage their blood pressure, you manage their day-to-day problems also. Otherwise, how will they run for a simple neck pain to another physician, or a headache? So, we are chronic care physicians. When we are looking at managing diabetes, it means managing glucose, A1C, B, blood pressure, C, cholesterol. These are mandatory in this part of our job. Any other questions?
Sir, I am continuing.
Let others also, then I'll come back to you.
Sir, okay, then I am on his orthopedic position. Sir,
Yes.
okay.
Let me complete, sir.
Please, let us question it first.
FDA in September 2017 approved the rapid insulin as part gas. So impression on that.
Rapid as part.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yes.
I think that I just need a passing mention of it, but this is ultra fast. Okay, as part. Which means that it will act even faster than the one that you are. And you can give it comfortably immediately after eating also.
Yeah.
I don't know yet how much it will impact care. We'll have to see what impact it has, but it's an interesting, it's the same molecule, they managed to make it faster acting.
Right. My last question, sir.
Please.
So, are insulin safe? See, this is a burning question. After the origin, the remote trial,
Yeah.
says insulin is safe.
Yeah.
But there are some misconceptions that insulin is not safe. Invented in 1921 by a best orthopedician surgeon. We are now in 2018.
So,
Why are we reluctant?
I think I'm glad you raised this point,
Yes.
because you're right, people still feel that insulin may not be safe. And I think there is no doubt, intuitively it has to be safe. It's a part of our bodies, number one. Number two, it's been in use for 100 years and it's been safe. But studies have shown, established modern studies, and I was country leader for both the studies, for Devote and Virgin, where we looked at insulin and cardiovascular outcomes, and even in long-term CV outcomes. There was a state when we were told insulin may be atherogenic, it's a growth factor and all that stuff. But there's nothing like that. Insulin is absolutely safe for the heart. So the only side effects of insulin are, over a period of time, weight gain, if you're not careful, and two, hypoglycemia. There's no other side effect.
So, may I take from here? I'm just opposite thinker of the insulin as
Yes.
not cardiac friendly. We will discuss in next CME. I request you to give one more CME.
Sure.
So, I will take question of Dr. Sen Gupta has said. Yeah, please. Yeah. Dr. Sen Gupta had said that not pricking the fingers and pricking the palm.
Yes.
How far we are from not pricking at all?
We are not
Just
far.
like oximetry.
I just told you that,
Yeah.
I expect that within a couple of years maybe we will stop it actually, or it will become very limited.
In your case number 182 years male, how much we presume is the EGFR?
82 days.
60 no. There was one first patient 82 years.
No.
And suppose 82 years.
Okay, suppose it.
Yeah. How much we expect the EGFR?
Why are you asking that? Where did you
Because metformin, as you said, should continue. It is
Okay,
Yeah.
if you're asking EGFR, metformin can continue even up to 30 EGFR.
yeah, not more than.
No, so lower than that also people did a study yesterday,
Yes.
but we would follow up to 30. And there is more and more evidence that low dose metformin is not in any way harmful, even in CKD. So I don't think we should worry about that.
In the study, there was
60.
comparison between glargine once and mixed insulin therapy mixed
Twice.
twice.
So glargine once and mixed, we are giving twice the long at the end. So is it a rational comparison?
No, just comparing two regimens, you can say just comparing. There are also comparisons of once a day. I didn't show that. But in once a day, it's hard for anything to match up to glargine or delivery because they control the fasting really well.
Any more questions, sir?
Sir,
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
sir, our disease is divided in three parts: ectomorphy, mesomorphy, and endomorphy. The ectomorphy and endomorphy. Those who are having a heavy, mota, and patla. I am not talking about mesomorphy. Having a less indigent, those who are heavy thighs. Those who are having a patla thighs, having a more incident diabetes. What is your opinion?
More?
जिनके पतले टांग होते हैं ना थाइस, उनको इंसिडेंट ज्यादा है डायबिटीज में, और जिनकी
Okay, your observation. Yes, I'll tell you very quickly. What you are saying is not wrong actually, and it's probably very correct.
So what is the
The major thing in that is that if we have more central body fat, and if we have lower skeletal muscle mass, we get more metabolic issues, including diabetes. So if someone has lean thighs, he has less muscle mass, so he is more prone to diabetes. And whatever fat is there, it is collected around the tummy in such people. So you're right.
Sir, I can say males are having more diabetes than the females.
No, that's not true. Not anymore. Yes.
If you think the ratio of the thigh is heavy,
You are saying, I'm not saying that. I'm telling you, greater muscle mass and lower fat proportion protects you from diabetes. Lower muscle mass and greater fat accumulation, especially central, is predisposing to diabetes.
Today's types of media because thighs and hip ratio different types of media. I'm not putting anything else. Types of media it is.
It's talking about maybe not referring to Serena Williams style.
Sir, last bit of question, sir. So you mentioned about basal bolus, and you said that you prefer basal bolus anyway or premixes. But given the convenience of premixes twice a day, I would like to know, is there any head-to-head comparison till date which measures the clinical outcomes of premixes versus...
Not clinical outcome, just glucose control and variability.
Okay.
So basal bolus is the preferred regimen. The only reason it is not used widely or used less is because of convenience. So it is my preferred regimen, but my patients don't prefer it many times, so I use a lot of premix. So what to do?
I think there are no more questions. Thank you very much, Dr. Ambrish, for excellent talk.